You may have heard that n8n has just come out with their own official MCP server. It's still in beta, but everything we're about to discuss about the community-supplied MCP server is still a step ahead and is worth a close look. This is important. Autonomy introduces risk. Hi, it's Mark from PromptMosis. Today I want to demystify something that you might have heard mentioned a lot lately in the AI world. MCP, or Model Context Protocol. I know it sounds pretty technical, but don't let that hold you back. Because whether you're building AI agents or just shopping for automation solutions for your business, understanding what MCP really is and what it does right now is going to save you time, money, and a lot of headaches. So let's walk through it. Let's say you're working with Google Sheets in a no-code or low-code tool like n8n. If you want to update a cell, you have to create one node. If you want to read from a row, that's another node. Delete something, yet another node. Each function requires its own separate node in your workflow with its own separate requirements. And when you're working with multiple tools, the complexity can skyrocket. This is traditional automation. It's super reliable, super structured, and it's also super rigid. So here's where MCP shines. With MCP, your AI agent doesn't need a separate node for each function. You expose the entire tool, like Google Sheets, and the agent decides at runtime which function to use. In this video, we're going to be creating this simple MCP workflow. Right now, you can only use MCP in a self-hosted n8n. At this point, you can't use community nodes in the official cloud version. So here's how to start using MCP in your n8n workflows. Go to your settings page. Let's go down to the three dots next to your name and select settings. Click on community nodes. Here you'll see a list of all the community nodes that you've installed. I've installed 2 so far, including the MCP one. So let's go and install it anyway, just to go through the motions. Click the install button. You'll get this dialog where you can actually click on browse to pick any of these NPM hosted n8n community node packages. There's over 1,000 to check out, so check it out after this video. We know the exact name, so let's type it in right here. n8n-nodes-mcp. Then you have to click this I understand the risks of installing unverified code from a public source, because this is public domain. We just want to confirm that we understand that. Then click install. I got a message saying it's already installed, but for you it will install. And then once it's installed, you'll see it listed in your community nodes page. I'm self-hosting on Elestio, which is very easy and cheap to self-host. So I'll walk through setting this up on the Elestio platform. The process is similar on related platforms as well as Docker instances. I'll link to other videos in the description for setting up a self-hosting n8n instance in a different platform. In Elestio, I just go to my dashboard and click on my n8n service, which I named n8n-dev. In the software section, click on Update Config. This will display the Docker Compose configuration file, since that's actually how n8n is hosted in Elestio. In the environment section, scroll down to the bottom under the last environment variable and add an extra environment variable here called n8n community packages allow tool usage and set it to true. Without this setting, Elestio's n8n hosting takes a conservative approach to hosting third-party nodes. As power users, we're choosing to override this. This allows us to use MCP as tools for our n8n AI agent nodes. Then click on Update and Restart so that the server reloads the Docker container using the new environment variable we just added. Once it's done restarting, we'll go in and work on the nodes itself. I've already updated this, so I'm not going to click on Update and Restart, and let's go to the next section. Now that MCP is installed, you attach the tool to the AI agent. The AI agent can then list all the available functions, and then it can decide which one to use, and it will pass in the right inputs. All of that is inside one node. This is what separates AI automation from true AI agents. The agent decides the flow. Technically, it's just an abstraction layer, a common software engineering concept that removes the need for hard-coded logic. It's clean, it's flexible, and it's scalable. Back in n8n, let's create a new workflow. Click on plus and select workflow. It opens up a new blank slate. Let's take a look first to make sure that the MCP server node is now available. Let's click on the big plus in the center. It'll pop up a list of different nodes that are available to us, and let's do a search for MCP. Here it is. This is the MCP client that we just installed, and this icon over here shows that it's a node from the community. So we know that's installed correctly. Let's first start by adding a chat trigger to this workflow. I'm going to click here and search for chat, add a chat trigger. And we're adding a chat trigger because this is the way we're going to start communicating with the AI agent itself. We're not going to set any parameters here right now, so let's go back to the canvas. You see that the chat trigger is here. When a chat message is received, it will continue the workflow. Let's click on the plus and now add an AI agent. Over on the right-hand side with the list of nodes, we'll see a group of nodes called Advanced AI. So let's click that. And this gives us all of different AI or LLM nodes that we can use. We're going to use AI agent here. So let's click that. As you can see, the expression for the prompt is $JSON chat input, which is a built-in variable that hosts the chat input from the trigger node. But let's add a system prompt as well. Go down to Add Option and click System Message. This is actually the system prompt. Okay, we're not going to just have you are a helpful assistant. I'm going to add to this. I'm going to say, you are a helpful assistant. Always check the list of tools for an MCP before trying to use a tool. We're being explicit right here to make sure that the AI agent knows that it shouldn't try just guessing what tool to use from the MCP server that we're going to be using, but it needs to first call the list of tools function from that MCP server. So then it gets a list so it can find more intelligently which tool to use. Let's now go back to the canvas. And now that we added the agent, let's do a simple test to ensure that the chat passes the request to the agent. So click Open Chat at the bottom, and that gives us a nice chat window to work with. And type in something like, find a place to stay in Boston during the first week of May. That's what we're going to test with this new workflow here, but we don't have anything yet set up to actually do that, but we just want to make sure that this message gets sent to the agent okay. So click the send button here, and there's an error, of course, because we didn't really set up the AI agent yet. So let's click into it and make sure that the message got passed through. And if you take a look on the left, this is all the input from the previous node into the current node, which is our AI agent. You can see right here, it has a session ID. Every workflow has an actual session ID that can be used further down the workflow. The action was send message. So that's the action that we gave for the chat trigger node. And right here at the chat input, you see find a place to stay in Boston during the first week of May. Of course, I didn't spell stay right, but I'll correct that. So it did come in correctly. So let's go back to the canvas. We need a few things first. We have an AI agent, but we haven't selected the model to use as our agent yet. Let me first close the chat window to give us more room to work. Let's click on Chat Model and add the model we want to use. Let's keep it simple and use OpenAI Chat Model, which is basically the ChatGPT engine. So from here, we need to create credentials if you haven't already. I have credentials set up to connect to my OpenAI account. But if you don't have this set up yet, you'll see this option, Create New Credential. So click that. Go to your OpenAI account so you can add an API key. Then come back here and paste your API key in. That's the only parameter that's required. So then just click Save. Like I said, I already have it set up, so I'm just going to use the one that I have. Now let's go back and add a memory model. As you see right here, this is the OpenAI chat model that we added to the agent. Click on plus under memory. Now we don't really need any memory for this particular workflow, but I want to show you how to set it up anyway. We'll just use simple memory. This used to have a different name, so if you have an earlier version of n8n installed, look for a similar option. I'll just leave the default of 5 interactions right here. This context window length, it tells you how many back and forth of the conversation that you can have before it starts to forget. We don't need anything right now because we're going straight through with just one prompt, but this is useful if you ever want to have a conversation. By the way, you see the session ID is being passed in using $JSON.sessionID. This is what I mentioned before. Represents the actual chat conversation that's going on right now. So this same number is what's tied to the memory. So everything that it remembers, it ties to the session ID, and it knows that it has to look back to the memory if it needs to remember anything you've already spoken about. Let's go back to the canvas. The simple memory is added here, and now it's time to add our tool. So far, we specified the LLM and the type of memory to use, but usually at this point is where we would need to use several tools. Not only for different type of tools like Google Sheets and so forth, or a search tool, or Airbnb, like we're going to be using later in this example, but also for every function within each of those tools. For example, like with Google Sheets, we'd have to have a separate one for adding a cell, a separate one for deleting a row, another one for inserting a row. But since we're going to be using MCP, we don't have to worry about that. This is where we'll now select the MCP client tool. So I'm going to click plus right here, and we'll do a search over here for MCP, and this is part of what we installed before from the community. So let's click on MCP client tool. Now you see there's 3 parameters to set up for the MCP client. One of them is the credentials to connect with. Then there's the tool description, and then the operation. Right now, I already have a couple of MCP clients installed. So you see them both here. I already set up my credentials for those. But you would just see create new credential and then click that, and then you'd be able to add in specifics about the credential. But right now, we don't even know what tools are available for the agent and how we even get those tools into n8n. Like we did before, MCP we had to install from the community. There's also a whole set of MCP servers that we can install from the community. So that's what we're going to go and do next. It's not the same as directly connecting to one of the many nodes included with n8n, nor a generic HTTP request node. The MCP client tool is simply the engine that interfaces with the actual MCP servers, none of which are included in n8n yet. Like I mentioned, this is all relatively new and will eventually be there. This is where we'll dig into the list of available nodes. So you can navigate to this site itself. This is a GitHub page, and I'll leave the link in the description below. This GitHub page lists all of the current available MCP nodes. They're grouped into sections. The first one are servers that demonstrate MCP's features. I just want to mention that there are some issues I ran into with the Brave search server. Just something to keep in mind with all of this because some of this is still being tested. Now, there are also officially created nodes, but the largest section by far are the community-supplied node servers. A popular example has been using the Airbnb server, which works pretty well, so let's select that. Just another point I want to make. These nodes are probably all in alpha or beta stages right now because they're pretty new, so they might not look exactly like what you see in this video. There may be extra parameters, label changes, etc. So let's use the Airbnb server. I clicked into it, and as you can see, there's a list of tools that this server makes available. This is similar to the many included non-MCP tools nodes in n8n except for a couple of things. One, we usually select those by function. And number 2, MCP actually standardizes how we can communicate with the tools and functions, which is a major feature of MCP, specifically the protocol portion of MCP, consistency. Each function has a list of required and optional inputs, as well as the spec for what is returned from those functions. Let's scroll down to the setup section. All of the MCP server docs are set up pretty much the same way in their GitHub repos. We're going to need the installation info in a moment, so let's keep this page open. Let's go back to n8n. Click on Create New Credential. In the dialog that's displayed, this is where we'll grab some values from the Airbnb documentation page and plug in those values here. But first, the command for pretty much all of these MCP servers will likely be the same at this time. enter the value npx here. In the arguments field, we'll have to grab all the values individually from the args array in the JSON configuration. Let's go back to the documentation. These are the three values that we have to pass over to the arguments field. There's -y, and the next one is the actual server code for Airbnb. And then the next one is -ignore robots.txt. If you're wondering why we're using the second JSON here instead of the first, it's because the second one instructs the server to ignore robots.txt, which was an older way to inform web crawlers which page of a site they're allowed to access. We're not really crawling, so we don't care. Okay, so let's grab each of these parameters. I'll just do a copy of this one. The other one I could just type in. Now everything here has to be space separated for each of the arguments. Go back and grab the last one. Now for Airbnb, we don't have to fill in the environments field because it's usually used for authorization. Most servers will require some sort of authorization to access this API, but for some reason Airbnb doesn't require this. They should, but whatever. Let's click on Save. Now we've created the credential. Now the tools description we're going to set automatically, and the operation for this first MCP client is going to be list tools. Some MCP tutorials skip over the actual installation of the tool servers before using them. Let me explain. Normally, in order to use NPM modules on a website, you have to first install the module via the Node.js npm command using a terminal session on the server. What the npx command does is bypass the installation step, and it actually does a temporary install of the module and executes it. But since installation is not instantaneous, we're going to want to install it first. So in Elestio, let's go back to the services page for n8n. Let's click Open Terminal. This allows us to actually get into the web server itself and run some commands. So the command we're going to run here is the actual install command for this Airbnb server. So let's type in npm install-g at openbnb/mcp-server-airbnb. This is the exact module that we referenced in the n8n dialog. And what this is going to do is install the Airbnb server. I already have it installed, so that's why I'm getting this error here. Once you're done installing, click Restart to restart the n8n server. I just want to point out here that we use the -g parameter in order to install the server globally, so other systems can have access to the same module. Some servers don't have the npm utility installed by default, so if you get an error saying npm is not found, you'll need to first run this command: sudo apt install nodes npm, and run that before running the npm command itself. You only have to do this once. Okay, so now that's installed, our MPC server can be run. Let's go back to the MCP client node. Select the credentials you just created, leave the tool description field as is, and then select the operation called list tools. Click back to the canvas, and let's test it. Let's enter the same prompt you entered earlier. Please find me a place to stay in Boston the week of May 1st. Now you see that the AI agent is working and communicating with the MCP client. Notice the chat logs on the right-hand side. This will show you the details of step-by-step it's taking. As you can see, it's actually checking the list tools to see what tool to actually run. It's actually going to go into an endless loop here because it's looking for that tool, and we didn't create the next node we need to create, which is the execute node. So let's just stop this for now. Just want to show here that this was actually the response of the list tools function. This is the JSON of it. It actually shows the list of tools that are available from Airbnb. Airbnb search is the one that we actually want to use. And there's also an Airbnb listings details function. We're not making use of it in this workflow. If you recall, we gave the AI agent instructions in the system prompt to always check the list of tools for an MCP server before trying to use it. It seems like it found that tool, but didn't have a way to execute it, so let's add that. First, what I want to do is I want to rename this to make it clear what it is. So let's go in and rename this to Airbnb list tools. And now let's create a second tool here, which again is going to be MCP. We could have copied the one that we had and just modified it, but let's just create it right here. Let's select the credentials we used, Airbnb, and this time let's select an operation of execute tool. Instead of specifying a tool name, we're going to put in the value from AI, passing in two parameters, tool and the tool selected. What this is saying is that we're going to get the actual tool to use from AI. It's actually deciding which tool to use based on the tool list. So we're just telling it to get the tool, and it's the description of the tool that's selected. So once it does that, we're going to select as the tool parameters, we're going to say it's coming from AI. So we'll click that icon there, and it's saying that it's defined automatically in the model. That's very convenient because MCP is actually defining a protocol of exactly how to access these MCP servers. So AI knows exactly how to find the right tool and how to actually make use of that tool. Let's rename the MCP client here. Again, like we did before, we're going to call this Airbnb execute. Now let's test this. Let's go back to the chat and enter the request we had before. And now we should see the results. Right now you see it's actually looking at the tools. It's going to find the correct tool to use. Going back to the model, now it's executing the actual Airbnb execute tool. Now it's letting OpenAI know what the results are, and it's displaying it back into our chat. The Airbnb MCP server used to list all the found properties, but like I mentioned earlier, these things are constantly changing because they're still in alpha and beta mode. Right now, it's just returning a link of search results for Boston. Let's click that link. And it's not even respecting the dates we're using. So it's just giving a list of all the Airbnb locations in Boston. So I'm not happy with the result. All it gave back was a link to a list of Airbnbs in Boston. I wanted to return all the details that the Airbnb execute function returned, and it was just doing a summary. So let me go into the system prompt and modify that to make it very explicit. And that's what I did over here. I said, make sure to return all details received back from the tool and not just a summary. So let's go back and actually test this again. Okay, let's see if it listens to me this time. It's getting the tool to use, and now it's executing, and let's see what it gives us back this time. Okay, the execution's done. It's sending it back to the model, and the model should be sending it back to us, hopefully very shortly. And here's the list of the different Airbnb locations that are available during that week. I should have told it to check in after, starting May 1st, but it's actually using anything that has May 1st in it. So it has checkout as May 1st and May 2nd. But we'll have to tweak our system prompt to make sure that it follows our instructions exactly. As I mentioned, Airbnb has been changing their MCP server. So there's some flaky things that are going on right now. These links are not going directly to those links. They probably saw too many tests going in there, and they want to make sure that they're not skewing their stats. And that's basically it. You see that we actually had the AI make the choice of which tool to use. We didn't care about what the parameters are. The LLM actually made that decision and executed the tool after it found the tool to use based on the user chat input. So why should you care? For solution builders, you can have fewer nodes, cleaner flows, and reusable logic. Businesses require less re-engineering, easier scaling, fewer brittle workflows. But, and this is important, autonomy introduces risk. Let's compare. For straightforward control flows, traditional automation can be predefined. The reliability is very high, but the flexibility for each run is low. Debugging is easier because it's predictable. For AI-assisted control flows, The reliability is still quite high because AI is given explicit instructions of what tool to use and when. Flexibility is moderate. You can tweak the scenarios you provide to the AI. Debugging is moderately easy, since the only additional risk is if the AI has not been given explicit enough instruction or prompting. With AI agents, the AI decides dynamically and is somewhat autonomous, especially when using MCP. But AI is not deterministic. At this time, there is no real guarantee that it will make the right choice all the time. It's estimated that it will be wrong 1 to 5% of the time, and if it hallucinates, making up decisions when it really doesn't know enough context to decide, debugging can be a lot more difficult. MCP empowers agents to call the right tool at the right time, but agents still hallucinate. They can still pick the wrong tool. They can still misunderstand your intent. So while the structure is cleaner, the logic still needs to mature. MCP removes the clutter, but not yet all of the chaos. So that's MCP. Smart, simple, and powerful. It's just smart software architecture. But remember, use traditional automation for critical processes. You need something that's basically guaranteed to succeed and be deterministic. Use AI automation when you want structure with some basic AI routing. And use AI agents when flexibility matters more than perfection. And use MCP to make your agents smarter and your workflows lighter. But again, when you use AI agents, make sure not to use them yet in processes that the companies depend on for their core business. These are great for chatbots and voice agents right now, with a lot of very clear and specific prompting. More on this in a future video. This isn't about hype. It's about building systems that scale reliably. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more examples or get help setting it up. And if this helped you understand the buzz, hit like and subscribe. Catch you in the next one.